Hi and welcome back to CM Equine. Today I'm going to be talking to you about LIMA. What is LIMA? It is used to describe a trainer or a behaviour consultant that uses the least intrusive and minimally aversive tactics out of a set of humane and effective tactics that are likely to succeed in helping you reach that behaviour modification goal. LIMA adherence requires that trainer or behaviour consultant to be educated to an adequate level, and it never justifies the use of punishment in lieu of other effective techniques. In order to ensure best practice, consultants should always pursue and maintain competence in their knowledge of animal behaviour and in their skills relating to behaviour modification. They should never advise on problems or work with animals and clients outside of their areas of expertise, and they always have to recognise the boundaries of their own skill level. They should always work to increase the use of positive reinforcement and decrease the use of punishment when working with clients and their animals. There's a huge focus on understanding your learner. This means that when you use positive reinforcement, you have to consider what is reinforcing to that specific learner. For example, a really nervous equine will likely not find scratches to be a positive reinforcer. The measure of each stimulus as a punisher or a reinforcer depends on whether that behaviour has been strengthened or weakened. And what that basically means is it doesn't matter whether your intention was to reward an animal. If that animal's perception was not that it was a reward and instead that it was a punisher, then that means that you have used punishment, albeit accidentally. Basically, in order to train effectively, you have to have a really good understanding of your learner. That includes species-specific knowledge about that kind of animal, and it also includes knowledge of that individual animal. Knowledge, particularly about the individual, is something that will develop over time as you get to know them. And so when you begin to work with a specific animal, it's important to pay attention to how they're responding to your training techniques so that you can adjust what you're doing to suit them. LIMA involves using systematic problem solving and strategies. As a trainer or consultant, you're responsible for ensuring the success of your learner. A variety of strategies may come into play. The ethical use of this variety always depends on the trainer's skills and ability in order to problem solve and figure out which is the best strategy to use at any given time, as well as their ability to understand the impact of each of these actions on the learner. By using LIMA, we seek to prevent abuses and the potential repercussions of poorly applied, inappropriate and inhumane uses of punishment, as well as overly restrictive management and confinement. LIMA guidelines require that trainers and consultants should always offer the learner as much control and choice as they're able to give. We must treat any species or individual with respect and with awareness of their individual personality, needs and preferences. When we train, we must always ask ourselves what it is we want the animal to do, not what we want the animal to stop. We don't want to have to say no continuously to an animal. We want to create opportunities for the learner to be able to offer us the right behaviour, and for us then to be able to say, yes, that's right. This means that the use of positive punishment is hardly ever justified. In LIMA, we have a humane hierarchy for how we work. The first step on this hierarchy is that we have to consider health, nutritional and physical factors in that animal's behaviour. This means that we have to rule out pain and medical conditions as a cause of the behaviour issue. A licensed vet must sign off on all of these factors and give that animal a clean bill of health before we can start training with it. This is why LIMA trainers and behaviour consultants always work under veterinary referral. For example, if the horse has a behaviour issue such as bucking due to back pain or something like kissing spine, no amount of training is going to solve that issue until that underlying medical condition has been solved. Once we've ruled out physical factors, we can move on to step 2 in our hierarchy. And this is about tackling the antecedents and the environmental causes of the problem behaviour. If the behaviour only happens in the presence of a specific cue, then we can simply remove this cue. If there's an emotional antecedent such as frustration caused by the management strategies of that individual, then we can remove that frustration by modifying their environment and changing their management. This might include increasing turnout for a horse, or it might include giving more enrichment. Addressing these antecedents will basically set them up for success going forward. And so once we've done this, we can move on to step 3, positive reinforcement training. This is where we will increase the desired behaviour by giving the animal something pleasant, such as a scratch or food reward. We can use things like clicker training and targets in order to set them up for success in their training and in order to guide them into what we are wanting them to do. We can also employ step 4 in the hierarchy, which is to train an alternate behaviour that is incompatible with the undesired behaviour, and you can use positive reinforcement to do this fairly easily. An example of an incompatible behaviour to train would be, say for example you have a horse that doesn't want to stand still at the mounting block. You can simply train them to stand still using positive reinforcement, and this is incompatible with the original behavioural problem because they can't stand still and move around at the same time. So what you would do is you would reinforce standing still, and you would remove all of the reinforcement that they were getting for moving around. Most of the time this kind of training will work, but if it doesn't, we can then move on to the next stage of the humane hierarchy. This involves using negative reinforcement such as pressure and release. We can also negatively punish by ignoring the problem behaviour and by removing the reinforcement that that behaviour was getting, and extinction will occur when a behaviour is no longer reinforced and the learner stops offering that behaviour. All of these techniques can cause frustration and some rebound behaviour, but if applied with enough skill, the same as positive reinforcement, these can be really effective. Because it's important to remember that positive reinforcement, not done correctly, can also lead to extinction bursts, frustration and rebound behaviour. And it's important to note that when you're using pressure and release during negative reinforcement, the pressure should always be minimal and non-escalating, but done well, pressure and release and negative reinforcement can be a really good tool, especially with horses. Everything we do with horses, whether it's riding or leading them around, involves some level of negative reinforcement. A lot of our cues that we use to tell a horse to do a behaviour such as stop or go forwards is a pressure touch cue, and training with negative reinforcement incorporates these cues organically. And so training with negative reinforcement can be really good for a horse and adequately prepare it for life in domestication with people. This is particularly the case if it's not your own horse. If you're doing the training for someone else, prepare that animal for a new home or to live a life where they will be ridden and will be led around, then it's important to get them used to these pressure and release cues, and you can only do that with negative reinforcement, and you can include some positive reinforcement as well to make it as positive and happy as possible. However, if you don't feel comfortable with negative reinforcement and you want to go 100% positive reinforcement with your own horse, that's absolutely great, and you can go ahead and do that. You can absolutely use clicker training and targeting to teach your horse cooperative care for vets, to teach your horse dressage or jumping. However, if that horse isn't your forever horse, if it's not always going to live with you or always going to be exclusively handled by you, it can be kinder to get them used to normal handling that they will experience with other people and in other environments. The final step on the humane hierarchy is positive punishment. Like I discussed in my punishment video, there is a lot of problems with using positive punishment. It's not something that should be taken lightly, and you should always work through this humane hierarchy before getting to that stage. However, it is in the hierarchy and there is a place for it. There are emergency situations where punishment might be justifiable. However, if you yourself feel you've got to this stage, that can be a really good time to call a behaviourist or a professional, and if you yourself are a professional, it might be worth talking to a colleague, and I would make sure that I haven't missed anything before I go ahead and implement or recommend positive punishment. I might even pass that client over to them if I feel that I can't help them the way they need to be helped. And I think that any behaviourist worth their salt would do the same thing. And this is why you can trust trainers and behaviour consultants that follow LIMA guidelines, because if they do it properly, they're always going to use the most humane and most effective strategy. Let me know your thoughts about LIMA down below in the comments. It can be a little tricky to get your head around it, so I'll leave a link to an information page about LIMA in the description. There's lots of information about it on the IAABC website, and I've also got it on my own website so that anyone who's interested in my behaviour consulting services knows that I follow LIMA principles. Subscribe to my channel if you want to learn more about behaviour consulting and equine behaviour. Give this video a like and share it with your friends if you have anyone that might be interested in learning more, and don't forget to drop me an email if you have a horse and are interested in a behaviour consultation with me. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!